session of Bates Botanical Boot Camp. I'm Vanessa, and this is Caroline, and we are here to talk to you today about indoor fern care.
Yes, which is one of my favorite houseplants to have. I love them, and to me, they're super easy to care for. They can be like moderately sassy, kind of a moderate level.
I've had some ups and downs in my personal experience, but I still love them. They're really, they're gorgeous. They have so much texture.
There's so many different kinds. Look at this variety that we have in front of us.
Yeah, all ferns.
All ferns all the time.
And most of them really enjoy indirect light, so they make really good houseplants. Like you have a lot of options as to where to place them. And they're also pretty much all the tree ferns, I think, are pet safe.
Yeah, so that's a nice thing. I mean, your cat drinks out of your tree ferns saucer that always has water in it.
It's apparently very delicious.
Maybe it has some nutrients in there for him. Something good for him.
He doesn't like his fountain. That's
buddy.
okay.
Well, we'll get started. So like we were saying, they're easy to care for. If you watched our succulent webinar last week, we're basically going to talk about the exact opposite.
Exactly.
So if you have a lot of succulents and cacti that need to take up those bright windows and you run out of space, but you want more houseplants, you can go ahead and switch over to ferns, which are going to be very different than caring for those succulents and cacti.
And, not all ferns are difficult to care for either. We have examples of kind of like your classic, more finicky fern, the maidenhair. And also, a lot of these ferns are actually pretty easy care. All the epiphytic ferns, like we've got, our staghorn, rabbit's foot, bear paw fern. Those guys can definitely handle getting a little bit drier in between. So if you're newer to ferns, you're worried about forgetting to water them, those are really good ones to start with.
Yeah, let's start talking about this blue star here, which I would say is one of the easiest ferns to care for. I wish I brought mine from home. It's pretty large. But it's cool. I let mine dry out in between waterings because, honestly, I forget about that one sometimes because it's in the upstairs of my house. And it's growing great. What's really cool about these, the bear paw, the rabbit's foot, and this blue star, and I'll bring our little blue star bear paw up here as well. I don't know if Tyler can see, but it has these little fuzzy arms that grow out.
Zooming in.
Here we go. Get ready.
Okay, where are they?
They're right down at the base of the plant.
You don't have to tilt it. You don't have to tilt it at all. I can see it right under. If you rotate it just a hair, there we go.
Love it. Yeah, that one's got little feet.
This one's a little bit better. I don't know if you can see that, Tyler.
Yes. Yeah, as it looks like a little rabbit's foot, huh?
So that's one of my favorite things when it comes to these ferns, are those feet that come out. And these are great ferns to mount. Mounting ferns are really popular right now. People like to make living walls, which you can use for these. And those little fuzzy feet are going to grow around everything and down once you mount them, or if you keep it in a pot.
They look really cool once they grow out and get bigger.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, the staghorn ferns, like this guy here, that's probably like one of the most popular ferns these days. Those are really easy to find, like already mounted. And they kind of have like more of a clumping habit, but I really like that as an indoor fern. That is one of my only ferns that I own at home, and it's doing great.
Yay! I actually got one for my parents for Christmas that I mounted for them, that they have hanging in their living room. And they hung it on a wall across from a window. So it's not getting hit with a lot of direct light, but it does get some bright light. And I have them like once a week, every 2 weeks, take it off their wall and soak it in the tub. They like a good soaking. You can also mist them and then let that water kind of wring out and dry and then hang it back up.
Yeah.
And it's happy.
That's going to be a general rule of thumb for most ferns is indirect light. Like direct bright sun can burn them. There are a few that can handle, some maybe direct morning sun. That's a little bit gentler. My bird's nest fern really seemed to enjoy that. Or I think the blue star,
fern, I've actually got mine in a window.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, so it gets a little more light.
But indirect light or like gentle morning sun is going to be good for those guys. No afternoon sun.
And did we get a shot of the bird's nest? I know you mentioned it, just in case our viewers want to know which one we were talking about there.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So that's our bird's nest. Vanessa actually gave me one of hers that is giant and doing really well. It's doing great. They're easy to care for. I water mine from the base with my bird's nest.
Yeah, the trick with these guys is they really don't like being watered in the middle, like because of the shape. It, is kind of reminiscent of a bromeliad, which you do water from the center. These guys are not going to like that. So you can just saturate the pot, like soak them from the bottom. I really like to bottom water a lot of the ferns. Just set the whole pot in a saucer of water, let it soak up, and
let it go.
Done.
Yeah. Awesome. So those are some good, kind of more easy ferns to manage. So if you're new to ferns and you want to get into it, those are kind of some good options. And we do have them all right now at Bates Nursery. Yeah. So you can come on down and see us and get you some ferns, and we can talk to you a little more about them.
Yeah.
Let's see. What do you have over there, Vanessa?
Well, next, we've got this lemon button.
Ooh, this is a fun one.
I really like these, and I had one for a long time. I forgot it outside. Sorry.
Whoops.
But I thought this one was pretty easy. Like, I definitely, forgot about it a couple times, and it got maybe a little too dry, but it bounced right back. So yeah, it's got these super cute little leaves. Like, it's a really fun texture, but definitely, fairly easy care fern as well.
It looks kind of like a baby Boston fern.
It does.
Which we don't have right now, but we will have a ton very soon.
Oh, yeah.
Coming up in the spring.
And one thing with ferns, too, is if they dry out, a lot of them will bounce back. So if you think you killed it, chances are you're going to be able to bring it back. You might even have to cut it close to the soil line, which we'll talk about once we touch on that little heartleaf fern a little bit later when we go into higher maintenance ferns.
But I don't know. I love these guys. They grow quickly, fill out very nicely.
Look great sitting on your coffee table next to a plant book.
Exactly.
All right.
All right. We've also, let's see.
Let's go. Do you want to talk a little bit more about,
Yeah, here, I'll do this guy. So this guy, also kind of more on the medium maintenance. This is actually not a true fern. This is a little Ming asparagus fern, but these guys actually have roots and grow from little rhizomes in the soil, which is nice because they can go like a little bit longer in between watering. They're a little bit more forgiving. But yeah, and they get huge and full. Like,
you have a giant one. Mm-hmm. She does. It's huge.
It's grown up a trellis.
It's gorgeous. I was blown away by that fern when I came over and saw it.
But yeah, so fluffy. I love it.
So we'll move on to some more higher maintenance ferns that we do get a lot of questions about. That people will come in and buy, and then they bring in pictures or bring their plant back and say, what's happening? Maidenhair. She's gorgeous. Yes. She's so voluptuous and full and just looks happy, but they can be a little bit sassy, especially in the winter. They like to stay really moist. Letting them dry out at all is just going to turn the ends of the leaves brown. And they'll die real quickly. Yes,
they get crispy pretty quickly. A lot of ferns are, especially the more, the delicate ones like this, humidity is key. So ferns are something that really do enjoy being misted, whether they're one of the hardier types or, one of the more sensitive ones.
Well, if you think about where you see ferns growing, even in Tennessee with those outdoor ferns, they're always growing near creeks. Like in a forest bed where there's all those leaves that are falling, bark, and we'll talk about soil a little bit later. So you want to try to make that happen in your home as best you can. I have a lot of mine. I'm going to clean that fern a little bit near a humidifier, which we touch on just about every webinar we do.
Yeah, humidity is key. But yeah, these, they make really good bathroom plants if you've got bright light in your bathroom.
Speaking of humidity. Bathrooms.
Yes.
Yes, that's right.
Perfect plant.
I don't have any bathrooms with windows in my house, but I put them in my laundry room, which does get a little bit of humidity.
My boyfriend won't let me put plants in the shower.
Well, that's just
I think it'd look cool.
I think it would too.
Do they make tubs with like plant shelves built in?
I don't think they're intended for plants, but
you
why
could
not, right?
Fill them with plants.
Yeah.
Like, why not? Who needs a shelf for shampoo?
Yeah, no one needs that much shampoo.
No one needs to wash their hair. What's that about?
We do have a question from Brittany. What level of expertise is a Boston fern considered?
Boston fern is pretty easy. Actually, we'll pull out a picture. We don't have one. And those are the ferns you see a lot of times in the summer or spring. People have them hanging on their front porch. And so people kind of, sorry, I keep cutting you off.
No, that's okay. But yeah, they are like a larger fern, so I feel like I don't see them in people's homes quite as much. But they're...
I did have one for a few years that I would keep on a plant stand, and then it got far too big to bring into my house anymore.
They do get hefty.
And they shed a lot in the winter, which can be an issue if you're not all about sweeping. If you love sweeping, by all means, bring that Boston fern in. They're easy to care for, and I've actually let mine kind of go dormant before as well. Like the last year I had it, I brought it in, I watered it, but I kind of cut it back because it was so out of control. But they are easy. Like most of the ferns we've been talking about, you want to keep that soil moist. So if you take it outside in the summer and have it hanging on your porch, it's going to be getting more air circulation because that's up high. So you have to water them once to twice a day sometimes in the summer when
it's really hot, definitely. Hot. But yeah, I have a little Boston fern chilling in my greenhouse. I cut that all the way back at the beginning of fall because I knew it was going to shed. And it's sprouting and doing its thing.
Is it? It's popping back out.
Not very quickly, but soon. It'll be happening soon.
Well, we have another question from Kathy. Hi, I noticed some white scale type things on my staghorn fern. I picked them off and sprayed it with insecticidal soap. I hope that was adequate. What are your thoughts?
It could be like a type of scale insect.
There's so many different types and colors, so it does sound like it. Has it come back at all since you brought them off and sprayed?
We'll give Kathy a second to respond.
And one thing with ferns and scale, ferns, they have spores on the underneath of their leaves, which can look like scale a lot of the times, but usually it's darker in color.
And it's typically a very regular pattern, too. That's what I look for. But yeah, I think on the staghorn ferns, those spores, it'll be like those lower leaves. It's just like a brown coating.
Yeah, so white doesn't, that sounds like it could be scale. So hopefully you were able to get that off and treat it.
Yeah, scale is no big deal.
It's not. I just had one on one of my cacti that I noticed last week. I should have sent you a picture. But I think I got it all off.
Yeah.
And it doesn't spread to anything else.
Well, I haven't heard. Oh, she just said, I just sprayed it yesterday and it is in quarantine.
Yay! Quarantining your houseplants is important too.
Definitely a good practice. And honestly, scale insects, I usually do like a Q-tip with a little bit of rubbing alcohol and just brush them off because honestly, dead scales and live scales look the exact same.
Yeah, you just don't know.
Sometimes I'm like, is that new? Did I forget about it? What's
That's exactly what I did with my cactus the other day.
It's pretty satisfying.
Well, if it happens to come back, you can always take a picture and email it or bring that photo in and we can talk about it a little more. So if that doesn't treat it, definitely hit us up.
Or even bring a stem in because we have a microscope.
Yes, we can put it under the microscope, which I believe someone did in one of their webinars about pests.
Yes, and Austin covers scale. We did that, about a month ago?
A month or so.
Common houseplant pests. It's in our webinar archive. Highly recommend checking that out because that does cover scale, mealybugs, spider mites, and it's a good primer to kind of talking about, like, especially with scale, I believe Austin recommends a systemic pesticide. And that's something that we recommend for plants that aren't edible. Because it's taken up through the roots and then the scale dies as it takes it in and keep it in quarantine along the way.
Yeah, none of that.
They're pretty and they're non-toxic to pets for the most part, but not really an edible plant. So moving on from that maidenhair, do we have any more questions? Okay, so I'm going to talk about this little heartleaf fern. I'm going to set her in the center. So I'd say this is probably one of the hardest ferns to care for. I've killed one
Oh, I've killed like 3. They're just so cute. Like, look at those little heart-shaped leaves.
They're
I love
adorable.
them.
Unfortunately, we don't have any right now. I think we sold our last one last week, but I brought mine in just to show you kind of what the fern will look like if you forget to water it and it starts to dry up. But these ferns are amazing because you can kind of resurrect them. You'll think they're dead.
Yes.
The leaves will be totally folded in and dry. And then as you water them, and it can take like a week and a half, those leaves are going to open back up and come back to life. So if we can get a close-up shot, Tyler, bring it on in. You can see in the center where some of the leaves are dry. Now those are dead because I started watering it again about a week ago. So it was coming back. And I haven't clipped them back just to bring that to show you. So if your fern's doing something like that, not necessarily this heartleaf, but with any fern, that's a huge indicator that it does need more moisture and more water. Once it starts coming back, you can just cut that dead stuff that didn't pop back up back. These ferns like to stay evenly moist, but not sitting in water. So that's what makes it super tricky.
There's a tricky balance there for sure. And they definitely, mine lives right next to the humidifier. It is constantly being bathed in that lovely mist. And it seems to be enjoying that.
Yeah, and they do like a little more light than some other ferns that we've touched on today.
All about that bright indirect light.
That's right. And I did something that we always say not to do with this one. I have it in a pot that has no drainage on the bottom. Ooh.
Uh-oh.
So if you're feeling brave and like you can really go for it and do it, it is a good option for those foins, for those ferns that need to stay really moist. So I probably water mine like every other day, every 3 days, and I just let the water run on it for like a second or two because it's such a small pot, just to keep that moisture there and flowing.
Yes.
Is there a difference between ferns and foins?
No, there's not.
No.
Okay.
They're synonyms.
They're definitely not.
They're the same. That's what I'm going to call them from now on. Good question, Tyler.
I always hit the good ones.
But this is a great fern, too, if you have a small space, because they don't get any bigger than this.
Yeah.
They're going to grow out, but they're not really going to grow any taller.
Yeah, I think the tallest leaf before I killed my last one, I think the tallest leaf was almost like 4 inches.
Yeah. And that's big for that. You were doing good.
I was doing good.
It's crazy how
And then I
fast
went
they
out of
die. If
town.
you forget to water it for like 5 days, it's gone. Like the first one I killed, I had it on my porch and completely forgot. And I remember I texted you when I remembered, and I was like, oh, my heart leaf. And it was just like totally shriveled and sad and dead.
Here's an experimental thought. What if you left a dish of water next to the fern and its evaporation created a little humidity?
We actually do
Microclimate.
have tried that
Yeah.
in the garden center in those.
We have these like little bonsai pots where it's like half like water and then half, plant pot. And they seem to be
They're doing
liking it
great.
in
We
there.
put some of the small ferns that we got in. So it's going to draw that humidity out. So perfect question,
great
Tyler. Good thing to
question.
talk about. So you can do that, with like a little bowl of water, a saucer, or you can get fancy with pottery and get that, separated. Looks like a cat food dish.
I was just about to say, put it next to your pet's like water bowl. That's probably not a good idea, though. I'm sure some ferns are toxic. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe
Well,
not.
Still. Out of
I mean,
out
there's
of
plants all over
temptation.
my house, and
I
my
know.
dogs don't. Thankfully, they don't eat any of my plants. I've never had trouble with that.
Good. Yes, my cat is very well behaved.
But I'm lucky. Oh, my dogs are not well behaved, but when it comes to plants, they just don't care. I think because they've grown up around them their whole lives. They've always been surrounded. So
Early exposure is key.
that's right. Well, while we're talking about that humidity and that water, humidity trays are a great option for ferns, especially if you don't have a humidifier. Maybe you have a small space and you don't want to deal with that taking up more room. So those humidity trays, you can take a saucer.
Yep.
Fill it with some pebbles, some pea gravel, and then put water in it. You don't want the water to be up above the gravel line because you don't want that pot to be sitting in water. So you just put enough to fill it, and then you're going to set your plant on top in the middle. And just what we were talking about before with those water dishes, it's going to draw that humidity. And they look cool. And
It
you can put
does,
more than one plant. You can get wild, just do like a turkey platter. as a humidity tray.
I have actually done like pretty big saucers, and then I'll do like multiple plants, or I've gotten like cute like marbles to fill it with.
Ooh,
Yeah, made it
imagine that
fancy.
on a coffee table.
Yeah, a nice little fern centerpiece.
Perhaps with a book. Oh, we should talk about this book because we did bring it up. This is one of my favorite houseplant books.
The
Plantopedia. I bought it for myself for Christmas, brought it in, and then Vanessa got one for
I
her.
bought one for myself,
and then
yes.
Paula, who works in our office and is amazing, she also got one. I think she made her husband buy it for her as a gift.
Aw.
Can you hold that back up so I
yeah,
can get a
yeah.
close up of it?
But if you're looking for a good houseplant reference book, and a newer one, it's got great photos and a lot of good information, and it's
Yeah.
laid out really well. This is really informative and helpful. I'll just kind of flip through some pages.
But yeah, it's nice because it's got like all the different like, you know, groups, like the bigger taxa, and then, you know, some representative plants. Like it's not, you know, every single plant of everything, but like I love how it's laid out.
Oh, there's our
There's a
maidenhair.
great overview. Yeah,
Look at that maidenhair.
That's a big one.
If your maidenhair fern has ever gotten this big,
Congratulations.
send us a photo. Congratulations, you got a gold star today. Actually, my mom's is this big. It might be bigger, but that woman can grow anything. This is also nice because a lot of my houseplant books are straight out of the 70s, and the
Yes.
photos are great, but just, you know,
Yeah, these are
not
nice.
perfect.
I was
so.
about to say that photography is wonderful.
Oh, it's a gorgeous book. I have it on my, I've mentioned coffee tables
Coffee
a lot
table.
today. I've got it on my coffee table and I look at it all the time. Yeah. So one thing that we didn't really touch on was soil
Oh yes, fern
for
soil.
ferns. Like we say, you want something that's going to help retain moisture. So you don't want to put it in cactus and succulent mix,
No.
which is what we talked about last week. You kind of want to go with a little bit of the opposite. If you think about where ferns are, they're in forest, they're growing near water. I mix like pine bark. I've used our pine fines in my mix that I make for my ferns. So it's got that, you know, that texture, that feel of
Yes.
the natural forest
Ooh.
floor working
That's
for
a
it.
nice aesthetic.
Yes,
Yes.
it is. And you can imagine inside that pot, it's also gorgeous.
Yeah, honestly, I'll typically just use like an all-purpose mix. Just, you know, right, like the Proganics Eye works really well for ferns too.
I do use that, and that's what I mix.
yeah.
I
See, I
start with
just
that
use
as my
it
base
plain.
and then get a little wild. Not too wild. I really just mix pine fines into it.
Speaking of getting a little wild, terrariums. What do you think about those for ferns?
I love them for ferns.
I was about
Yeah.
to say, I feel like that's right up
Oh,
Vanessa's
yes.
alley.
So I've kept a lot of like reptiles too, like dart frogs. That was the only maidenhair fern I've ever had do so well for me. It was in a little glass box with my fancy little frogs with an automatic mister like 3 times a day, and it was phenomenal.
That sounds perfect.
It does.
I loved it. But yeah, the glass like really helps keep the moisture in there. And yeah, you can just, yeah, keeps it more enclosed, and it's beautiful too. You can
I've
decorate
never
it.
tried.
Yeah.
Never done it.
You should try it.
I
Pretty
should.
fun.
I have so many projects.
Make like a little
What's one more?
terrarium garden.
Throw it on the pile.
Get a frog.
Yes, get a frog.
I don't need any more pets. I have 2 dogs
Yeah, frog.
and a farm cat.
Frogs are pretty cool
It's
though.
too much for me.
So do we have any more ferns from the pile to show off?
Well, I've got one.
Oh, our silver lace.
Yes, silver lace fern.
This one has a little more color than the other ferns, as you can see.
And it does get some pretty good height to it too. This is actually one of the shorter ones. But those fronds in the middle do get pretty tall. They definitely are like a little bit less forgiving when it comes to getting a little too dry. Those fronds do grow crispy pretty quickly.
Yes, they do.
But
I'd say
yeah,
that's
so-
the biggest problem with ferns, the crispy factor.
Yeah.
But you can always just cut it off. You'll never
Yeah,
know it was
just
there.
cut it off. It'll come back. Ferns are really good at bouncing back. Like even when, you know, you've cut back most of it, they still come back. A little bit of love and fertilizer in the springtime, and
And
back
there
to
it goes.
normal.
Just like the Boston fern, macho ferns, same way.
Yes.
And they're sold around the same time, or at the same, I don't know why I said around. They're sold at the same time. People have them on their porches and their sunrooms. You can bring them in, and like Vanessa was talking about with her Boston fern,
Yeah.
you can cut them back. And actually, we'll pull out a photo of
Yeah.
one.
Do I also see like a really scrunchy looking fern on Vanessa's side over there?
The button fern up top.
Oh, button fern?
No, not the button fern. It's like buried in the mix there. What is
Oh.
that one?
We
forgot this
forgot
was
that
here.
one was here.
So this is actually basically, this is the curly version of a Boston fern. So same species. This one, they call it an Amina fern because it's
gorgeous.
enigmatic.
Ooh.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm just
Sounds good to
things
me.
up on the fly. But
just saying
these are pretty unique. Like that's definitely a very different texture. I've only ever seen them small, but I assume they would reach like probably a similar size to a lot of the Boston ferns. Just a little more compact, scrunchy.
Yeah.
Would
They're
look
gorgeous.
great in a face planter. Ooh,
Oh, it would. As I was
Yeah.
about to say, it looks like ponytails.
it does.
Look at her go. Yeah.
Yeah, we certainly have gotten a lot of face planters this year.
We have gotten a ton of face
So
planters.
many.
I actually have my other heartleaf fern that is doing better than this in a face planter, but I didn't think I needed to bring 2 in.
Yeah,
I
you
thought
can
I'd
see
bring
photos
more.
of some of those on our Instagram,
Yes, you can.
and there'll be more hitting soon.
But there are a lot. All right.
Yeah.
Well, do we have any more
Yes.
questions coming in?
Yeah, we'll just see if anybody wants to chime in. Feel free to submit your question in the chat. I personally, the only fern experience that I've had is with a ghost fern, but that's an outdoor one.
Oh.
But it's
How'd it
really
do?
beautiful. It dies back every year to almost where you think, oh, is this an annual? Because it almost disappears.
A lot of them do, like all the way to the ground. I mulch my outdoor ones. And
Yeah.
they're gone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will say, like, I've had much more success with ferns outside than inside
Well,
ever.
they come from outside, and then we brought them in. So,
Yeah.
but none of these will winter out here.
Yeah,
I think
but
there is a maidenhair variety that will
Yeah. I
like
forget.
loosely overwinter here. Maybe not.
Yeah, not this one. It's
No,
like it
definitely
looks
not that one.
similar, but
It's got much darker leaves and a little bit glossier. I love ferns. Inside, outside.
there's so many.
I do like the look of them a lot.
I do too. And they're just so cool. You think about them being epiphytes, like growing on trees and just kind of wherever they can. We have one growing in the greenhouse right
Oh my
now.
gosh.
Just at the base of one of our support
Yeah,
beams.
just a little crack in the concrete. It's thriving. It loves it.
It's actually doing better than the ferns
Yeah.
that we have in pots of the same variety. So
And you know how some stores have like a house cat or
We have a house
shop
fern.
cat or whatever.
Yes, shop fern.
Yeah, we have a
do.
shop fern.
We should name that fern though.
absolutely. If anyone has a name idea, write on in.
Yes. Name
Martin-
greenhouse fern.
Martin's asking a question here. I'm a big lover of maidenhair ferns. He said, I guess the audio went out just when you were talking about them. Any words of wisdom about maidenhair ferns?
Moisture,
Misting.
misting, humidity, bright and direct light.
Yes. And Vanessa was talking about the one she had in a terrarium with an automatic mister, right?
Yes,
That was
did
hugely successful.
fantastic.
And anytime with my, I've got a silver dollar, which is close to the maidenhair. I've already let some leaves die. I just cut them off, just
Yeah.
down to where that leaf browned. And
They definitely do need like a little bit more pruning to keep them looking their best.
you get to give them a good haircut from time to time.
Someone's asking, do we sell misters and humidifiers?
We don't sell humidifiers. I mean, we sell.
We do have
like,
some
spray bottles if you're going to be mist in on your own. But yeah, humidifiers, no.
We don't have those. We have some of the supplies to make a humidity tray, and we do have those pots we were talking about, the bonsai pots,
Yeah.
like with the reflective
They hold
side.
like a little cup of water.
And it's going to be perfect for like a 2-inch pot fern, so like the size of this heartleaf fern. If you had something like that, that would be great for it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm not seeing any other questions, so I guess we'll go ahead and wrap this up.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. I hope you learned a little bit. Ferns are a great project. Again, you can mount them, you can keep them in pots, you can let them
Decorate your
go in
bathroom.
cracks of things. They do great. They're easy. And if you have any questions about yours that you have now or that you would like to purchase, feel free to come in and ask
Yeah.
away.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.